Welcome to Magic Pillow, a special place where bedtime stories come alive and dreams begin. Snuggle in, get cozy, and let your imagination drift. Tonight's story is The Prince Who Learned the Magic of Sleep. Long ago, in a peaceful land far beyond the tallest mountains and the quietest clouds, there lived a kind and thoughtful king. His kingdom was called Lemuria, a place where the days were warm and gentle, and the nights were soft and glowing with silver moonlight. The people of Lemuria loved their king, because he ruled with patience, wisdom, and a warm heart that cared deeply for everyone, especially children. At the center of this kingdom stood the king's home, a palace so large and beautiful that many said it was not just a house, but a world of its own. The palace had long hallways that seemed to stretch forever, rooms filled with books and music, and tall windows that looked out at the stars. At night, the palace shimmered quietly, as if it were listening to the moon. Every evening in the palace followed a gentle rhythm. As the sun dipped below the hills, lanterns glowed softly, voices grew quieter, and the palace slowly settled into sleep. The king believed that rest was one of the greatest gifts in life. He believed that sleep helped the heart stay calm, the mind stay clear, and dreams grow strong and bright. But although the king ruled a peaceful kingdom and lived in a palace full of calm, there was one small place where rest did not come easily. That place belonged to his only son, the young prince. The prince was clever and full of energy, with eyes that sparkled with curiosity and feet that never seemed to want to stay still. While the palace slept, the prince often stayed awake, listening to the quiet, wondering what secrets the night might be hiding, and thinking that bedtime was far too early for someone with so many thoughts to chase. Each night, when the palace grew quiet and the lanterns dimmed, the young prince was supposed to be asleep in his soft, warm bed. But instead of closing his eyes, he stared up at the ceiling, watching shadows dance as the moonlight slipped through the curtains. He listened carefully to the sounds of the palace settling into silence. The gentle ticking of clocks. The distant hush of fountains outside. And the soft footsteps of guards walking slowly through the halls. The prince felt wide awake. His thoughts raced like little fireflies, bouncing from one idea to another, refusing to slow down. Soon, curiosity would get the better of him. He would quietly slip out of bed, tiptoe across the cool floor, and open his door just enough to peek into the long, moonlit hallway. Break time equals 0. 5s / The palace at night felt different. Bigger. Quieter. almost as if it were holding its breath. The prince would wander through empty rooms and echoing corridors, touching smooth walls and peering into dark corners, imagining secret adventures waiting just for him. He believed that staying awake made him brave. He believed that sleep was something only boring people needed. But when morning came, the prince often felt heavy and slow. His eyes burned. His steps dragged. He yawned through his lessons, missed easy answers, and grew frustrated over the smallest things. Yet even then, when the king gently reminded him that sleep mattered, the prince only nodded and promised to do better, while secretly planning to stay awake again that very night. And the moon, watching silently from above the palace, seemed to glow just a little brighter, as if it knew what lesson was coming next. The king began to notice the change in his son. He saw it in the way the prince rubbed his tired eyes during breakfast, and in how his cheerful laughter grew quieter each day. During lessons, the prince struggled to focus. Words drifted past him like clouds, and numbers tangled in his mind. When he played in the gardens, his legs felt slow, and even his favorite games no longer brought him joy. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, the king invited his son to walk with him through the palace gardens. They strolled along winding paths, surrounded by sleeping flowers and gently humming crickets. "My son," the king said kindly, "I see how tired you are. Sleep is not a rule meant to take away your fun. It is a gift meant to help you grow." The prince listened, kicking a small stone along the path. "I try," he replied softly, "but the night feels too interesting to miss." The king smiled gently and placed a warm hand on his son's shoulder. "Then perhaps," he said, "the night itself must help teach you." That night, after the prince had been tucked into bed, the king remained awake. He walked quietly through the palace halls, speaking softly to the caretakers, the guards, and even the old palace clock. No one else heard what the king planned. But as the moon rose higher in the sky, something subtle began to change within the palace. Doors whispered as they closed more gently than before. Lights dimmed earlier, and the palace itself seemed to breathe more slowly, as if preparing for a quiet lesson meant only for the prince. The prince, still awake in his bed, felt the air grow calmer around him. But he did not yet understand what it meant. That night, just as he had many nights before, the prince waited until the palace grew silent. When he was sure everyone else was asleep, he quietly slipped out of bed and opened his door. But something felt different. The hallway was dimmer than usual, and the lanterns glowed with a softer, warmer light. The air felt calm, as though the palace itself was gently asking for quiet. The prince stepped forward and began to walk, but his footsteps sounded slower, heavier, as if the floor wished him to rest. He reached the end of the hallway and tried to open a familiar door. It did not open. Curious, he tried another door. And then another. Each one remained gently closed, not locked, not stuck, but peacefully resting. The prince felt confused. The palace had always welcomed his nighttime adventures. Now, it seemed to be guiding him somewhere else. As he wandered deeper into the palace, the clocks ticked more slowly, their sounds soft and steady like a lullaby. Even the shadows no longer danced wildly. They rested quietly against the walls. The prince yawned without meaning to. His eyelids felt heavier than ever before. Still, he resisted. "I don't need sleep," he whispered to himself. But his voice sounded tired, even to his own ears. At the end of the corridor, he noticed a soft glow spilling from a doorway he had never seen before. Drawn by curiosity, he stepped closer, unaware that the king's gentle lesson had truly begun. The prince stepped into the softly glowing room and felt warmth wrap around him like a blanket. The room was quiet and peaceful, filled with gentle moonlight and the slow rise and fall of calm air. Inside, he saw cozy beds arranged neatly, each one glowing faintly as if dreaming already. Tiny lights floated above them, moving slowly, like sleepy stars drifting through the night. The prince felt his breathing begin to slow. His racing thoughts grew quieter, one by one, as if they were being gently tucked away. He noticed something strange. Whenever he tried to think of running or exploring, the lights dimmed. But when he stood still and breathed deeply, the room grew brighter and warmer. The prince sat down on one of the beds. It was softer than anything he had ever felt. His shoulders relaxed. Images began to float gently through the air. He saw himself running freely during the day, laughing without feeling tired. He saw himself listening carefully during lessons, answering wisely, and feeling proud. Then the images faded, and the room grew quiet again. The prince rubbed his eyes. For the first time, staying awake did not feel exciting. It felt heavy. He lay back slowly, staring up at the glowing ceiling. His eyelids fluttered. But just before sleep could take him, the prince whispered softly, "Just a little longer." And with that thought, the glow dimmed slightly, waiting patiently for his choice. The prince tried to sit up again, but his body felt slow and heavy, as if it had been awake for far too long. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood, but the room seemed quieter than before, waiting. As he took a step forward, the glowing lights above him shifted. They no longer danced playfully. Instead, they moved gently, like leaves drifting toward the ground. The prince felt a soft tiredness settle deep inside him. Not an uncomfortable tiredness, but a calm one. He thought about all the nights he had wandered the palace halls. How exciting they once felt, and how empty they seemed now. He remembered the mornings when his head ached and his temper was short. The times he snapped at his friends. The moments he felt small, simply because he was tired. The room responded softly to his thoughts. A gentle hum filled the air, steady and slow, like a heartbeat. The prince lay back down. This time, he did not fight the feeling. He placed his hands on his chest and took a deep breath in, and let it out slowly. The lights dimmed further, and the warmth deepened. The prince felt safe. For the first time, he understood that sleep was not something that ended his adventures. It was something that prepared him for better ones. And as his eyes finally closed, the palace seemed to sigh with quiet relief. The prince drifted deeper into sleep, and in his dreams, the palace transformed. Hallways that once seemed endless now glowed softly with golden light. Rooms he had never noticed before opened wide, filled with gentle music and shimmering stars. He wandered through these dream rooms with ease. Every step felt light, every corner full of surprises that made him laugh quietly to himself. In the gardens, the fountains sang more clearly than ever, their waters sparkling with the colors of the morning sun. Flowers that had been closed at night were now awake, their petals opening as if to say hello. And the birds, who had been asleep in the branches, began to hum soft tunes of joy. The prince realized that these wonders appeared only because he had rested. His eyes sparkled in the dream as he noticed how vibrant and alive everything had become. He saw himself running through the gardens during the day. This time, he was not tired or slow. He could jump higher, laugh louder, and play longer without feeling weary. He remembered the king's words. Sleep is not a rule meant to take away your fun. It is a gift meant to help you grow. The prince understood now. Sleep was not the enemy. It was a secret helper, quietly giving him strength, happiness, and clarity for all the adventures he could imagine. When he woke the next morning, the first thing he noticed was how bright and beautiful the palace felt. He stretched his arms, yawned with a smile, and felt a happiness that had not been there before. Even the birds outside seemed to chirp just for him. The prince ran to the king, hugged him tightly, and said, "I understand now, Father. Sleep is magic, and I will try to honor it." The king smiled warmly. From that day forward, the prince began to follow the rhythms of the palace. He went to bed when the lanterns glowed softly and the moon hung high in the sky. At first, he still felt the tug of curiosity, wanting to wander the hallways. But he remembered the magic of the glowing room, the dancing fountains, and the happy flowers. He understood that those wonders came only to those who rested. Break time equals 0. 5s/. Each night, he found that sleep became easier and sweeter. His dreams carried him to gardens brighter than day, through towers that touched the clouds, and across corridors that whispered gentle secrets of the moon. During the day, he ran faster, learned more, and laughed louder than ever. He discovered that rest did not limit his adventures, it made them even more wonderful. The king watched his son with pride, happy that the young prince had learned the quiet power of sleep. And every night, they would share a soft moment together, looking out over the palace gardens and the moonlit kingdom. The palace, which had once been a quiet home full of restless footsteps, now glowed peacefully every night. Its walls hummed softly with calm. Its fountains whispered gentle lullabies. And the prince, wrapped in his blankets, drifted into sleep with a heart full of wonder, knowing that the world could be bright and magical when he rested. And that sometimes, the most powerful adventures begin not when the eyes are open, but when they are closed. So the kingdom of Lemuria thrived, the palace glowed softly, and the young prince learned a secret that would stay with him forever. Sleep is not an ending. Sleep is a beginning. The story has ended, and the night is calm. Thank you for joining us on Magic Pillow. Snuggle up, close your eyes, and let your dreams take you to magical places. Sweet dreams, and good night.